Okay, so I'm Gareth Chapman, and this is the Ask Tom office hours for the Oracle Autonomous Health Framework. Today I have Bill Burton, who is the lead developer for Trace File Analyzer, and Bill's here to answer any of your questions. I also have some questions we can start with if we need anything in advance. As usual, we won't be talking about anything specific to SRs or any license questions today. So in case we do cover anything that's not yet released in the discussions, please make note of the safe harbor statement here. So all lines are on mute, so please put forward any questions that you have via the chat, and then I'll relay these and put these forward to Bill. And we are recording, and the recording will be made public. So please be aware that anything that you do put into the chat window will also be available publicly. Okay, so with that said, I'll open up the chat line. So if anybody has any questions, if they'd like to type them into the chat. Okay, I don't see anything so far, so we'll make a start with some of the pre-prepared questions we have. Okay, so first thing then, Bill, what's Oracle's goal in developing TFA?
Well, I mean, realistically, the main thing we try to do here is try and reduce the time to resolution for support requests. Not just in the support request, but also when these support requests escalate to bugs. It's really a case of trying to have a simple interface that that customers can use to collect the right diagnostic data first time. And if we can do this, that actually helps us in many ways. It helps to reduce the amount of diagnostic data that gets collected, so the time for customer collection, the amount of time it takes to then upload that data for support, and then actually, obviously, the time that it takes to analyze the data. And we all know about the way that in the past we have a lot of pinging between engineers and pinging, between engineers and customers. And TFA's goals, by making sure we get the right diagnostics first time, actually helps us to reduce that pinging. So there's not a case of customer raises an SR, engineer says I need this data, gets partial of what he wants, but maybe even forgets to ask for something, and then that comes in, that data comes in, then they ask for more data, and the customer gets frustrated. TFA's goal is to get that data first time, and if we don't get that data first time, then support engineers should be pinging back to us and saying, look, you're not doing your job, we need to raise bugs against TFA and get that data done. So, but that's it. Reduce the goal to, reduce the time to resolution, save time for, obviously, Oracle engineers in resolving those SRs, but even more importantly, for customers to get their problems solved more quickly, and save time in generating the data that's needed to actually help us do that.
Okay. So TFA is already included in the grid infrastructure and the DB homes. So does this get upgraded as part of the release updates?
Okay. Yeah. TFA does get included within the grid and database release updates, and PSUs obviously for customers running prior to 12.2 database and grid. The thing with TFA though is that we release TFA out on MOS first, and then that gets utilized, and that after it's been out a certain amount of time, then we will actually include it in the PSU. So there is a delay there, or the RU, I should say. So there is a delay there. The other thing that's worth noting is that because it comes through and it's most cases with the grid infrastructure and the normal database installed, we run it as root. Then it gets automatically installed and upgraded within rack and grid infrastructure because there's a root element to the patching. However, for when you've got non-rack, so you've got an RDBMS installed, there's no root component to your standard patching. So then a customer would have to come along and run the TFA upgrade script as root themselves. And there's kind of not a lot you can do that apart from to state the fact that it needs to be done because of that lack of root element. And that's it really. We have it there. It's in the RUs, and we'll upgrade it automatically for rack and grid infrastructure.
So staying with the RUs then. So can I still upgrade to the latest version of TFA without applying the RU, or do I need to apply the RU to do it?
Okay. No, I mean you can upgrade. As I mentioned previously, TFA comes out on MOS first. The MOS release is actually the first available release we make of the new releases, and we try to release quarterly. And we, with a year, we use a similar versioning strategy to the database. So we have a year and a quarter. So the release about to come out will be 83. That will be on MOS. You can download that from MOS, and it will be and you can install it on your system from there. So on a quarterly basis. The thing to note is there's a different installer for each operating system. So we actually include the Java runtime environment required to run TFA within there, and because the JRE is actually port specific, we have to include the port specific JRA in there. So we have to have a different installer for each operating system. So that's clearly done on the download page. Right. The doc ID, I've got it here, it's 1513912.1. But obviously a simple MOS search for TFA download should take you there straight away. And there's instructions in there on how to install, update, and use TFA.
Okay. So moving on to the next one. So we've spoken about the release update and also the installer being on MOS there. So is there a difference between the MOS version of TFA and what we get included with the RUs?
Yeah, and it's less than it used to be. Back previously, there was a lot of the support tools that were not included as part of the TFA that came out with your PSU and your RU. Those were historically left out. But as we've moved on to later, they've gone through more testing, and these support tools, most of what you get with MOS download you will get with the RU, although as I say, slightly delayed. Things like AuraCheck, we don't put in the RU within TFA, and that's mostly because AuraCheck actually manages its own upgrade within a release update. So there's no AuraCheck within the TFA, but you would actually get it within a MOS download of TFA. Also, we actually do have some RDA components that wouldn't get done through the RU update, but would through the MOS update. But other than that, it's the same code. I guess it's worth noting that we don't let me start again. We don't put the JRE part within the TFA that you get in the RU for 12.2 and 18 database, purely for the fact that there's already Java 8 in there, and we can utilize that. For the older ones, the 12.2 and 11.2 systems, we actually have to put Java 8 in because they're not there as part of the grid or database home, and consequently we need to ship those. So they will be in the older PSUs.
Right. Okay. So what happens then if I've downloaded, for example, if I've downloaded TFA for MOS, I've got the latest one then, and then I then try to apply an RU which has got an older version in it.
Okay. Well, whenever you try to install TFA, so whenever you run the installer, the TFA installer, it tries to find if you've got TFA currently installed on there, and then we'll look at the version that is already installed. So, if you're trying to install a version that's equal to or less than the already installed version, then it'll simply do nothing. It will say it's already installed. You've already got a later version than installed, and it'll just be like an error. It basically matches the version, and it doesn't matter where. So if you try to install using the RU, and maybe you've installed TFA outside of the grid home, because it comes by default, but it's possible to download it from MOS. You can put TFA anywhere, and you then install, you install an RU, and that will still not try to install in the grid home. It will understand that you have TFA outside the grid home, and again look at the version and only upgrade it if it's a newer version. Right. So I guess the point is you could still use RUs to upgrade TFA outside of the grid home if needed, even though you downloaded it from MOS and installed it in the first place in a different location.
Right. Okay. Okay, so you mentioned earlier as well about doing root installs and things, and so we've got these two different install types. We've got the ability to install as root, but then also to install as a non-root user. So can you talk about what the difference is between the root install and the non-root install?
Okay. Well, when you install when you do the standard root install, TFA will start up a service that's running continuously. It actually will discover your diagnostic destinations and monitor your diagnostic destinations, and do a lot of work in the background. It'll be available for multiple users. It'll be able to do collections across multiple users, and obviously be able to collect everything that root can collect. Now, we understand, or we understood the fact that the root requirement was a problem in certain cases. So we actually came up and the first phase of this was to come up with a TFA that you can just install as the Oracle user, or any user to be fair. But let's just use the Oracle user as an example. You install it in a non-service run, so there's no continuous process running. You just install the software. We lay the software down, do a small amount of configuration on that software, and then it will run as that Oracle user, and it will discover what that Oracle user can see. And obviously, it won't be able to collect things that only root is able to actually to gather. So, it's limited by the permissions of that particular user. But the advantage of that is it's really good if you've got multiple DBAs that are managing different parts of the business that you actually don't want to keep and have any access to each other. And that's more difficult to manage with the daemon side. But it's quite a different thing. But you can actually even have both installed on the same system. And then TFA gets into the case of looking to see if there's the full root process running. If it is, then it'll look to see if you have the access rights into that root process. And if you don't, it'll drop back to have a look to see whether you've got your own local one running as well. And when you have your local one, it has to do all of its processing at the time you run the command. So it has to do the metadata gathering and all that at the time you run your TFA CTL command. And obviously, it can't do. It doesn't have the ability to do remote collections or anything like that. It's a local, user mode only process that runs.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. So if TFA is running in root mode and it can do these automatic collections and things. So how do I go about getting notified if TFA sort of detects any issues?
Okay. But it's worth noting that TFA has if you've got the full process running, it will look at your logs and look for a certain set of events like R600, 7445s, which are particular database examples, obviously. But and if it sees those, we'll do collections. So it'll actually generate a diagnostic collection and then put it in the TFA repository, and that you can then look at yourself, upload to support. You can also get notifications when those issues are seen. So we'll do a diagnostic collection and then send you a notification about that error and those diagnostic collections. To do this, you need to set the notification address in TFA, and there's actually a TFA CTL set command to do this. So you say, set this notification address to my email address, and TFA will notify you of any collections that are done. Now, that's kind of a catch-all notification address. So any collections that get done, you can also say, I want that notification address to be more specific. So only for issues that are seen in logs owned by a particular OS user. Okay, so maybe the logs owned by DBA1, you want to set to go to one DBA, logs that are owned by DBA2, go to a different email. Right. And with that, you still use TFA CTL set notification address, but you actually put in the OS username and then the email address to do that. And you can you can send the notifications for collections to different users if you want to do that. The other thing worth noting is this works fine if you've got local SMTP, you've got mail set up on your system. If you've got a remote SMTP server, then you can actually set that within TFA, and it will utilize that to send the emails.
Right. Okay. Okay. And now TFA's got an ability to do some uploading to MOS. So can TFA automatically upload to MOS?
Yes. I mean, when you do the diagnostic collections, and this is only for manual collection. I mean, this is you do a TFA CTL diag collector currently. You can use the SR command, option to say upload to this particular SR. And for that, you're obviously going to need to have your MOS credentials available, and you can set those up as a TFA CTL setup MOS command that will allow you to set up your MOS credentials, store those in a wallet, and then do minus SR and the SR number you want to upload to. So you do TFA CTL diag collect, whatever options you needed, with the minus SR flag, and it will upload it to that particular SR within my Oracle support. And that, ideally, in future we'll try to come up with, I think maybe some auto SR generation would be nice on issues, but this is what's available right now.
Right. Okay. Okay. So when these collections get taken, where do they get stored?
Okay, the TFA has what it calls its repository, and that repository is defaulted to a specific location at install time, but you can also set that. So you can tell TFA to put its collections under a different directory, file system, whatever. So the TFA CTL set command setting your repository. There's a default, so it'll try and set the repository for 20 gig maximum size when you install it, so when you originally set it. But if you don't have that much space in the file system that you're setting the repository to, then it says, well, I'll take half of that. So if you've actually only got 15 gig free on the file system, it'll set its max repository to 7.5 gigabytes. But that's obviously we're trying not to getting into a position where we're, utilizing too much space on the file system, not unless you actually, specifically say we can, or worse than that, fill the file system.
Right. Okay. So to that point, then, does TFA make sure that there is space to store the collection before it takes it?
Yeah. I mean, we set that max repository size, so we then monitor it. So again, something that the process will do, the continuous process will do all the time. It will monitor the space in the repository and in the underlying file system, and it will do so. It will actually say it's closed. So it will consider the repository open or closed. And if you do actually do something like TFA CTL print repository, you can actually see the status of the repository at that particular time. It'll tell you how much space was allocated, and how much space is available in the repository, and space in the file system, and the state. So it could be closed or open. If the repository is closed, then two things are going to happen. One is you're not going to be able to make a diagnostic collection. So it will wait until the repository is open to do that. And the other things it will go and purge old collections in an attempt to open up that repository again. There is a parameter that you can set to say only consider collections older than this time for purging. If you whatever that is set to, when we come along, we will start going through the oldest collections and purging them away until such time as we can free up space. So yeah, TFA tries to manage that. And like I say, it's not just a case of have I got space in the repository. It also looks at the underlying file system. If the underlying file system starts to get too full, it'll also close the repository and say I can't do anymore.
Right. Okay. Okay. So how can I make a targeted collection?
Okay. Yeah, the original TFA had although it was, the plan was to be significantly more targeted in our collections, we were still collecting a lot of data that may or may not be relevant to the specific error type. We were honing down on the areas of the diagnostics that we wanted that may not have been specific to the type. So what we've introduced now is support request given collections. So for a particular error, say an R600 or 7445, and there are about 50 of these different SRDC collections that we have now that you can use. So you go in and you will say die collect SRDC R600, and when you do that, it will actually go and look for the R600s that have been generated. It will give you the times of those R600s. You can choose one. It will then gather just the diagnostics that the support teams have asked for us to collect for that particular event type. So things like R600, obviously we're going to get the particular trace log, the alert log, and maybe some sort of OS information for the like database performance. So you can run a dbper. If you run that, it's going to ask you what the time of the performance problem was. It's going to ask you for a comparison time when performance was good, so that we can do diff reports, and then it's going to go and obviously it has to be a database, and then it's going to run AWR reports for the time periods. It's going to run the diff reports. It's going to get ASH, get ADAM. It's going to get OS performance data from OS Watcher. It's also going to gather CHMOS data from the cluster health monitor if you've got grid infrastructure. All of that can then be used to determine database performance issues. In fact, it will, even if it's closed, if it's more down to a SQL problem, it will ask you if there's a SQL that's causing you an issue, and also ask for the SQL ID and get kind of SQL health check data as well. But this is all done to try and reduce those, the bloat in the collections and make them specific to the problems.
Right. Okay. Okay. So what else can TFA do apart from taking collections?
Okay. Well, there's a bunch of tools, and we're adding to the various tools and things that will help DBAs and obviously other system users analyze problems and understand the current health and state of their systems. So the first thing is, as I say, we've got AuraCheck, so you can run AuraCheck or XCheck from within TFA. So you can actually run those from the TFA command line. You don't have to have those separately done. And also, with the very latest TFA that's coming out, it will actually start up an AuraCheck. If you want, it will start it up in a continuous service mode, where that can then gather collections, AuraCheck collections periodically for the higher levels of checks. So that's going to be useful. These OS Watcher we add, so that's something really for something we use for collections, but there's also within there there's a tool to actually graph information from OS Watcher, so you can actually see some of your trending at CPU, and that's kind of a nice tool that actually builds on the fact that we wanted to gather OS Watcher data anyway. We also ship in the support tools a Proc Watcher. And that's really good for kind of hang type issues where it'll connect to your database, it'll look at your weight chains and start to dump some very targeted information about the processes in weight chains, rather than just going and getting a big system state dump or something like that. It'll go and get that data. And that's been really, been determined to be really helpful to determine some of those kind of hang and slow performance problems. We have a new real-time database monitoring tool called AuraTop that actually ships now within the RDBMS in 12.2 and 18.1, but was just with TFA prior to that. And that will show you again actually what's happening in your database at that time, processes consuming DB, CPU, that type of thing, and also processes that are high weights. And that's something that that is useful for DBAs rather than just for sending to support. There's an alert summary tool that will summarize your alert log for a particular database, or for your ASM. You can look at the files TFA has. You come from within the TFA shell. There's a TFA shell that you can go in and you can say things like ls alert. It'll show you all the alert logs, and you can do and then you can actually do a VI alert from within the shell to go into that alert log. So you haven't got to go looking for your alert logs. You can just get to them straight away. You can get P stacks of processes across the nodes. You can grep for errors in your logs if you want to do that, or you can use TFA CTL events command, which will go and look at all of the events that we've stored out of your alert log. So you can actually see. So you can say, show me all the events that happened in the last 7 days in this database, or all the events that have shown me in the last 7 days across all databases and ASM and CRS. And anything that we believe is interesting, we will have put into a Lucene index, and then you can actually query those. You can do changes. So over a particular period in time, you can actually say what has changed. So OS parameters, database parameters, these type of things, TFA CTL changes, and put that in. So it'll really help you just see what's happened, and we're actually bringing all these together into a new tool set within TFA that will show this. So you'll be able to you'll be look at what's available on your system. You'll be able to see so what's not available, more to the point. Is everything there that normally should be, and then be able to get a summary of your system and these type of things. The other thing that's worth noticing is TFA shell is a true shell in as much as you've got command recall and history, so you can actually go and redo some of the commands You can set context, so you can say all the commands that I'm about to run are relevant only for a particular host or a particular database. So you could say, set my database to Bob, and then do an LS alert, and it would only actually find you the alert log for the database Bob. So these are kind of interesting things to actually go through, and we're kind of adding tools all the time as we feel that they're useful. There's also an analyze tool itself that will analyze and give you statistics on the errors within your database logs and your grid infrastructure logs.
Wow. So far from just collections, much more.
There's lots, and I think we're trying to. One of the big things is to try and move into actually being a useful tool for analyze. Because collecting the data is one useful thing. You then want to analyze it. You then want to come up with a suggestion as to how you fix it, and then even better, you want to fix it. Now, obviously, we're not there yet, but that obviously, talking about autonomous health framework, we need to be able to get to that point. So we're adding the tools to gather we've got the gathering of the information. We're adding the tools to analyze them, and as we move forward, there'll be more in the way of suggestions to fix issues, maybe even bug information, be able to do some sort of bug matching, and have some level of auto fix, where people want that to happen.
Right. Excellent. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the prepared questions that I had. So let me just open it up again once more into the chat group. If anyone's got any questions that they'd like to post into the chat, please do so now, and I can put those to Bill. Anything that's come up through here? Any questions on anything you've heard, or any questions on anything else you know or don't know about TFA? No? Okay, doesn't look like there's... Okay, so is there a plan? So we've got a question here. So is there a plan to integrate TFA with Oracle Enterprise Manager?
We're working on trying to find the best way to do this. This is not just TFA. There's also, we talk about today TFA Collector, and there's also a TFA service that will be made available not too distant future for the collected data to go to and then do more analysis on the service. So you can actually correlate up some of the data into the service across multiple nodes and multiple clusters. So we don't just have to deal with getting the collector in, we have to deal with dealing with the receiver side of it. Well, sorry, the service side of it as well. So we started talking with product management. We're just trying to come up with the best way to integrate that. Currently, but just doing some sort of plug-in for EM probably isn't going to be the best option. But we are, like I say, watch this space, and we're trying to organise something to get it within there. I do know some people already use TFA from within EM by building their own jobs. And I know that some of the Platinum services are doing that, utilising TFA to execute jobs from within EM. So that's one of the ways that we can get into something. But I think we need something much better than that to actually come up with some product that will be useful. And again, I think it will need to be done with the service as well, not just the collector side.
Right. Okay. So there's going to be so sort of in the initial short term, it's sort of the TFA service is going to be the main position for sort of an enterprise-wide view of that with it. But we do have some plans further down the road to try to integrate with OEM. But is it fair to say then we don't expect OEM integration this calendar year?
I think that's fair to say, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Great question. Thank you. Any other questions from anybody in the chat? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. And thank you, Bill, very much for answering all of the questions there. Just before we finish up here, just a quick plug for some future Autonomous Health Framework office hour sessions. If you sign in to the page there, you'll be able to subscribe and get notifications of the future sessions. You can also add future ones to your calendar there. So we have these every fourth Tuesday of the month. So the next one we have upcoming is going to be in August, which is going to be a deep dive into QoS management. And then also once this session has finished recording and things, that will be made available via the site there as well. And you can also go back and you can watch some of the previous sessions that we've had in this series as well. And then you can also subscribe to the Ask Tom Office Hours YouTube channel, where you'll see them all there as well. Okay.